صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تتقلب فيه القلوب والأبصار. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Condolences to Imam of our time on this sad occasion upon which we commemorate the Wafat of Bibi Masumah Qum, Salamullahi alayha. The verse that I chose for tonight's discussion is from Surah Nur, chapter 24, ayat number 35 and 36, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing and directing our attention toward certain houses in which His name is raised and is remembered. He says, in houses Allah has allowed to be raised and wherein His name is celebrated, He is glorified therein morning and evening by men whom neither trade nor bargaining distracts from the remembrance of Allah and the maintenance of prayer and the giving of zakat. They are fearful of a day wherein the hearts and the sights will be transformed. Very strong ayat, and the tafsir of this ayat talks about these houses are referred to the houses in which the ibadat is performed, such as the masajid as well as the Husainiyat or Imam Bargas. When we look at in Ziyarat Jami'ah, when when imams in general are addressed, we read, it says, جَعَلَكُمْ فِي بُيُوتٍ أَذِنَ اللَّهُ أَن تُرْفَعَ وَتُذْكَرَ. That therefore the shrines of imams also fall under the category of those houses in which the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is raised and He is remembered. These are the houses in which ibadat is performed. These are the houses in which, while we go for the ziyarat of these important personalities in our lives, the purpose for the ziyarat is to gain nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The purpose of the ziyarat is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because according to our belief, these are the individuals who have this maqam in Allah. As the person who's under discussion tonight, Bibi Masumah Qum, Salamullah alayha, in her ziyarat nama, we read that Ishfa'i li fil jannah fa inna laki inda Allahi sha'nun. That, O Fatima Masumah Qum, be my intercessor, do my shafa'at in Allah, be my intercessor. Why? Because you have this sha'an, this maqam in Allah. And because of that maqam that you possess, I'm here in your house, in your shrine, in your haram, and I'm seeking this forgiveness. and I'm asking through you. Yes, through you. So with that, we understand that our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir wasalam, he said, Buyut in this verse refers to the house of prophets and the house of Imams. So not only the places where they were buried, but the place where they lived. Ta'alabi, one of the Mufassirin of Ahl Sunnah, he writes in Tafsir, he quotes that one day Prophet was busy reading this verse. Abu Bakr came, stood up and asked, O Prophet of Allah, is the house of Ali and Fatima meant by this ayat? Rasulullah responded, it is indeed. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Fi buyutin adinallahu an turfa'a wa yuthkara fi hasmuhu, it is meant the houses of Masumin alayhimu salatu wassalam. When they were alive, their houses, and after their shahadat, the houses or the places where they're buried, they are included in this ayat. Messages that we gain from this ayat is the access to the guiding light of Allah is achieved through visiting his house or the houses in which Allah is mentioned and remembered, such as the masajid, such as Husainiya Imam Barga. It says Allahu Nur, because this is Surah Nur. The ayat that are recited are from Surah Nur. Allahu Nur, Yahdi Allahu li Nurihi. Allah guides toward his Nur. And then right after that, he says, Fi buyutin adin Allah. And these houses. So not all houses are equal. Some have preference over other. Fi buyutin adin Allah an turfa. Some places, they might not have that sort of achievement, or they will not have attained that status. Those who are not bothered by their business or neglectful toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are consulted, or they show their nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're considered to be exalted individuals. Rijalun la tulhihim came with tanween, this word rijal, which is a sign of high and superiority. So there are people who stand in these houses. So when we stand in these houses, which are Imam Bargas, Husainiyat, Masajid, these people who are not bothered by what's happening, the business that is happening, the call of the prayer is something which brings them together. If Iman and intention is strong, the deviating tools have no effects whatsoever. La tulhihim tijaratun. While tijarat and business and these sort of trades might be attractive, but if we are focused and our Iman is strong enough, then that would be the last thing on our mind. And ask honestly yourself, when you find yourself in the presence of, when you are lucky enough to be in the vicinity of Kaaba, in the vicinity of the house of Rasulullah, the Masjid of Rasulullah, when you are in the city of Najaf, when you are in the city of Kufa, when you are in the city of Karbala, when you are in Medina in the presence, although the shrines may not be there, of the four Imams that are buried over there, and the Masumah, Bibi Janab Sayyidah Salamullah Alaiha is buried there, and when you are in Mashhad or you're in Qum, all of these houses that we, sometimes are given this pleasure to visit. This is the tawfiq that is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to visit these houses. When we have that tawfiq, last thing on our mind is anything worldly. When we are in those houses, when you are in the Qubba, under the Qubba of Imam Hussein, when you're in the shrine of Imam Hussein, standing next to it, the last thing on your mind is any sort of trade or merchant or any sort of business transaction that is bothering you. So that's what this ayat of Quran is saying, Surah Nur 36, that La tulhihim tijaratun. The shrine of Hazrat Masumah Qum salamullah alayha is also amongst those houses which is being referenced in this ayah. That is one of the reasons why the Islamic Republic has remained under protection until now. With all of the things going against them, all the controversies surrounding, which are concocted, made up for no reason, you see that they still find themselves to be under tremendous support and protection. And that is divine support and protection because of the wujud of our eighth Imam, Ali ibn Musa Rada alayhi salatu wasalam, and Bibi Masumah Qum, salamullahi alaiha. These shrines of Masumeen are not only meant for the purpose of ziyarat, rather they also provide an opportunity for the seeker to attain the ulum of Ali Muhammad, the sciences of Ahl Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. They are means of bringing your i'tiqad and your akhlaq to the highest of the levels. Hur is a prime example in Karbala of how the change of heart happens. He's in the vicinity of Masum. So that being in the vicinity of the Masum, how it brought change into his heart. All these years he was away from Imam Masum physically. And when he is in the presence of Imam Masum and he had this encounter with Imam Masum, has spoken to him a few times, look at this transformation that takes place. Need I remind you this ayat which Allah says, يَخَافُونَ يَوْمًا تَتَقَلَّبُ فِيهِ الْقُلُوبُ وَالْأَبْصَارُ. Fearful of a day wherein the hearts and the sights will be what? Transformed. So Hur is transformed as well when he's in Karbala. Ayatollah Mohsin Hakim, I'm sure you've heard of his name, Grand Marja in the 70s before Ayatollah Khui. He's buried in Najaf near the Haram of Amirul Mu'mineen. He came to Karbala near the grave of Hur and he said this, "You are Hur and I'm Hakim." His name was Hakim and he's referencing to Hur. You are, an individual, who was not from the progeny of Rasulullah, while I am Sayyid. You are the leader of maybe 1,000 men that were under your cavalry. There were 1,000 people that you were the leader of. I am the leader of millions. Ayatollah Hakim was al-Itlaq, he was Marja-Ali, Marja-Alam, and there were millions of the Muqallideen. Just like today, millions of people follow Ayatollah Sistani or Ayatollah Khamenei or the other Maraja. So Ayatollah Hakim said the same thing. He said, I'm the leader of millions. You are a soldier and I'm a scholar who has thousands of students. And need I remind you, the hadith which says, تُؤْذَنُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ مِدَادُ الْعُلَمَاءِ مَعَ الدِّمَاءِ الشُّهَدَاءِ فَيَرْجَحُ مِدَادُ الْعُلَمَاءِ عَلَى دِمَاءِ الشُّهَدَاءِ. That on the day of judgment, the pen of a scholar will be measured with the blood of the shuhada and the martyrs. فَيَرْجَحُ Rujhan, that means the preference will be given to the pen and of the scholar over the blood of the shaheed. Now we're not discounting the blood of shaheed, but just importance of the pen of a scholar. So he said, what happened that you attain such a status where people like us, who's leaders of millions of people and teacher of students, thousands of students, come to your bargah, take off our shoes and do your ziyarat and ask for shafa'at. Have you ever thought why Imam Hussein tied his handkerchief around Hur's head? Rasulullah said, La safaratun fi sabilillahi khayrun min khamsina hajjat. That travel, that journey, one journey for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is superior to 50 pilgrimages to Mecca to perform the Hajj. Now, of course, it's not discounting that one pilgrimage to Hajj, but that one travel which is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any travel for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you go to Karbala, when you go to Mecca, when you go to Medina, when you go to Mashhad, when you go to Qum, any of the ziyarah of Masum with the intention to seek closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is better than, as the Prophet is saying, 50 Hajj if you were to perform. 4 Imams have recommended doing the ziyarat of Bibi Masumah Qum, salamullah alayha. Prophet at another place he says, Man farra bidinihi min ardhin ila ardhin wa in kana shibran min al-ard istawjabat lahu al-jannah wa kana rafiqa abihi Ibrahim wa nabiyihi Muhammad. That whoever does hijrat for the sake of their religion from one land to another land, even if it is shibran, shibr is maybe a foot, not that long, Urdu mein hum kehte hain ek balish, from that the length of your hand, 1 foot maybe. That even if this hijrat is 1 foot, heaven becomes obligatory upon such an individual and he will be counted amongst the companions of Hazrat Ibrahim and Rasulullah. So there we go. We find that there's an entire chapter about Hijrah in our books of fiqh. The Hijrah of Ja'far Tayyar to Abyssinia, Prophet's migration from Mecca to Medina, Imam Hussein's migration from Mecca to Karbala, and the Hijrah of Bibi Masumah Qum Salamullah alayha from Medina to, her intention was Mashhad, but to Qum. Why did she come to Qum? After the wafat of her father in the year 83 after Hijrah, and the death of Harun in 193, war between the two sons of Harun, Amin and Mamun, broke out. One, of course, was from the Arab wife, the other one was from the Ajam. And of course, eventual triumph was with Mamun. He became al-Itlaq, the ruler of all of Muslim empire. And then Imam Rada was seen as the biggest threat to him. So he summoned Imam to Marv, which is, by the way, not present-day Iran. It was in Turkmenistan, this land where Marv was, where Mamun was ruling. That was in Turkmenistan present day. Imam, upon leaving Medina, said to the family members to mourn for him, as they will not get to see him again, and he will be martyred. This is his last. And then he went to Mecca. That was the last Hajj that Imam performed. And the way he wept when he was leaving Makkatul Mukarramah. Mamun had instructed to bring Imam through Basra and not pass through Qum, since there was a population of Shia and the followers of Maktab Tashayyu in Qum, and there might be a revolt through them. Hazrat Masumah Qum Salamullah alayha embarked on the journey to visit her brother, and she chose the path which goes through Sava, which is near Qum. But when she reached Sava, she became ill and couldn't continue her trip. Some mention that in Save, which was not too far away from Qum, which was at that time a very historically known city, there were some elements of Bughz Ahl al-Bayt, and there were some enemies who then attacked the caravan of Bibi Masumah Qum Salamullah alayha. 23 of the Sadat that were traveling along this Bibi, which were amongst them were some of the children of Imam Musa Kazim ﷺ, were martyred, and she was poisoned in that trip. And then she couldn't continue, so she was brought to Qum. She stayed in this mahalla known as Maidan Amir, which is now known as Noor Street today. That is the background of her travel, the intention behind her travel. We've heard the story of how in the year 200 or 201, she, after Imam Rada had left in the year 200. And after a year, she makes this intention to perform this travel. We find in the Riwayat that whoever visits her with proper ma'rifat will benefit from the inspiration given by the one who's buried there. It will help the Zair remain steadfast in his or her affairs, be patient against the turmoil of the temporary abode, and have the ability to protect against the evils of this material world. This is the gist of Islamic morality, akhlaqiyat. We read in her ziyarah, one of the segments of her ziyarah that I want to touch tonight, 4 or 5 different segments of her ziyarah. One of the segments in the very beginning is, as the ziyarat begins, of course, we need to understand this is one of those ziyarat, as far as the ziyarat of Ghair Masum is concerned, is marwi from a Masum. That means a Masum has narrated the ziyarat. Other ziyarat of other individuals may not be from Imam Masum. But this lady, Janab Masumah Qum Salamullah alayha, is amongst those individuals whose ziyarat nama was written by Imam Masum. So we read that one of the initial segments of the ziyarat is Assalamu alayki ya binta Rasulillah. Peace be upon you, O the daughter of Rasulullah. Prophet was mentioned in Quran as wa innaka la'ala khuluqin azim. That, O Prophet, you are at the highest standards of morality. And then Prophet himself said, Innama bu'ithtu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq. I was raised, one of the reasons, in fact, the reason for me to be sent is to perfect the noble traits and the akhlaq and the ethics. From that segment, when we see Assalamu alayki ya binta Rasulullah, she has that similarity with Rasulullah. She is known as Karima Ahl al-Bayt, someone who's Kareem. That when someone swears at you, curses you, you do not respond in the same way. That's the ability of someone who's Kareem. That even when they're facing al-La'im, which is the opposite of Kareem, they don't treat them in that way. And so some of the makarim al-akhlaq, if I can mention over here a couple of examples, because we hear this a lot, but we don't explain this. For example, what is the difference between akhlaq and makarim akhlaq? One is plain ethics, one is noble ethics. What's the difference between the two? Have you ever wondered? Prophet said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Not just akhlaq, that makarim al-akhlaq. So one of the good traits of ethics is to forgive someone. One of the good traits from the ethical perspective is to help someone. For example, someone was so horrible to you, done so much damage to you, but then they came and they asked for forgiveness, wholeheartedly, truly, begging for forgiveness. So you show a big heart and you go ahead and forgive them. That's akhlaq. But then sometimes you might have seen that people who forgive, they say one thing: because of the fact that you were so evil to me, I forgive you, but I don't want to see your face ever again. Someone might say that. I forgive you, but don't ever show me your face again. Don't ever cross my path again. Someone borrowed money from you. It's a good trait to help others. It was a loan. They said they'll return it in a year, but they couldn't for genuine reason. Took them a year and a half. And when they came, they apologized. This is the money. Sorry, it took longer than it was promised. You said, that's it. Yeah, I forgive you, but don't come asking me for any more help. I'm the last person who will help you now. It's good. The akhlaq is to help. The akhlaq is good. Akhlaq is to go ahead and forgive. But makarim of akhlaq is to not say those things. That while I forgive you, I don't want to see your face again. While I've helped you and I forgive that you returned the money late, but don't expect me to help you again. That makes you makarim al-akhlaq. That's the second step after you have shown ethics and morality. So we find that there are three ziyarat name, these three ziyarat for Ghairi Masum that have been taught by Imam Masum. Hazrat Abbas's ziyarat nama, Hazrat Ali Akbar's ziyarat nama, and Bibi Masumah Qum salamullah alayha's ziyarat nama. So when you look at an overview of her ziyarat nama, there are elements for the nearness of Allah. First element is muhabbat of Ahlul Bayt. We read in our ziyarat, it says, Ataqarrabu ilallahi bihubbikum. I seek nearness to Allah with your love. Life without love is like a body without a soul. The society which is not ruled upon love and passion is like a graveyard which is filled with sadness, silence, wahshat, terror, and hopelessness. But who should we love? The real love is with the Creator. And if that is established, then people will be able to love the creation automatically. According to the narration that on the day of judgment, everyone rather, will be raised with whom they loved. Al-mar'u ma'a man ahabba. That a person will be raised with the one who they used to love. Therefore, love Ahlul Bayt. It is the best means of attaining the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are not just riwayat. You read chapter 3, Surah Al-Imran, ayat number 31. Very known ayat. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. O Prophet, tell them, if you love God, then follow me. Translation might not do justice over here. In kuntum tuhibbun. If you were to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then obey me. Allah will love you in return. So of course, we're not looking for one-way traffic where we just say, well, we love Allah. We want the other love on the other side as well. But the condition between us loving Allah and Allah loving us back is what? Ittibai Rasul. Ittibai Ahl Bayt, Muhabbat Ahl Bayt. That is all part of it. Ataqarrabu ila Allah bihubbikum. The third segment that you find in her ziyarah, it says, Wal bara'a min a'da'ikum. That I seek bara'at from your enemies. That is also important. That you can't just love those who are the Ahlul Bayt, those who are the lovers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not show dissent from your heart towards those who are enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't have both of them together. Third farman that we find is to bow our head and lower our head in front of the commands. وَالتَّسْلِيمُ إِلَى اللَّهِ رَاضِيًا بِهِ غَيْرَ مُنْكَرٍ وَلَا مُسْتَكْبِرٍ. I am absolutely submissive and radhi with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. This is all in the ziyarat of Bibi Masumah Qum salamullah alayha, by the way. غَيْرَ مُنْكَرٍ وَلَا مُسْتَكْبِرٍ. Without any sort of denial, inkar, and without showing any sort of arrogance against it. So a lot of time we find that are we taslim? Are we submissive towards the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We read this in ziyarat. We just recited Dua Kumaid. Have you pondered over what Amir al-Mu'mineen is mentioning in this Dua Kumaid? Although the translation is being played there. We got to take these words and let them sink into our hearts. Following absolutely, completely the Shariat and having yaqeen upon it. وَعَلَى يَقِينٍ مَا أَتَى بِهِ Muhammad. And I believe in everything that Prophet has brought. Then also showing what? رَضَايَتْ وَبِهِ رَاضٍ نَطْلُبُ بِذَلِكَ وَجْهَكَ يَا سَيِّدِي. That we are radhi and we seek through your means, O Sayyidi, what is being asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And lastly, the last segment that I want to mention, that khatima bil khair, bis sa'adat, that we want our end to be on the best note. Allahumma inni as'aluka an takhtima li bis sa'adati fala taslub minni ma ana fi. That make sure that my end is upon prosperity. And don't take away from me that which I have. Akhirat is important. What you did entire life is also important. But if that does not remain at the end, then what good is this? Here's the example I gave you just initially. Would have been better over here. Might have done good work all life long, but at the end, we're not on the deen. Then everything is lost. Her did not do this all life long. He opposed Imam Masum, but the last moment he was in agreement. We find the examples of this in Quran. Surah Araf 175 talks about Bal'am Ba'ura, who had the knowledge of Ismi Azam, but he used it and he went after his own desires. وَاتْلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ الَّذِي آتَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا فَأَتْبَعَهُ شَيْطَانٌ. That tell them, O Muhammad, the story of a person whom we inspired with our guidance. So he had Ismi Azam from Allah, but who detached himself from it and then was pursued by shaitan until he turned him into a rebel. Just pay attention to the example that Allah is setting of this man who had Ismi Azam. فَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَابِينَ. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ. Such a person or such person's bad habits are like those of a lazy dog who always has his tongue hanging out, whether you chase it away or you leave it alone. The comparison that is being made over here. So, Akhirat bi khair is good. Example of Zubair ibn Awan. First person who raised his voice after the house of Janab Fatima Zahra was attacked, right after the Wafat of Rasulullah. When Janab Fatima Zahra wrote her Wasiyat Nama, one of the people who signed it is Zubair. The 7 people that are present in the Tash'i and Janaza of Janab Fatima Zahra, one of them is Zubair. Talha, Zubair, you recognize them in with that combination. Zubair is amongst those 7 people. He's the one who raises his voice when the house of Fatima is attacked. But what happens in the battle of Jamal? When Amir al-Mu'mineen comes into power, both of these men, Zubair and Talha, they turn their backs against Imam, revolt against Imam, using one of the wives of Rasulullah, attacking, and the battle of Jamal takes place. And we know rest is history. So Aqibat bil Khair. Where's Zubair? He's raising the voice for Janab Zahra. He's amongst those who signed the Wasiyat Nama. He's amongst those who are present in the Tashi Janaza. These are some standards we're looking at. But then what happens at the end? He's attacking Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's fighting against Amir al-Mu'mineen. One of the segments that we recite in the ziyarat of Bibi Masumah Qum is Assalamu alayki ya binta Fatima wa Khadija. She's called the daughter of Fatima and Khadija. There are many similarities. Janab Sayyidah is the daughter of Hazrat Khadija and the daughter of Rasulullah. Similarly, Janab Masumah Qum is daughter of Najma Khatun and Imam Musa Jafar alayhi. And her life, if you look at one of the riwayat of the Shahadat of Bibi Zahra Salamullah Alaiha is that she died when she was 18 years old. We believe in that firmly. But one of the riwayat that Ahl Sunnah has that she was born 5 years prior to the Bi'that. That would add 10 more years to her life, making it to be 27. Janabe Masumah Qum was born in the year 173. And at the time of her Shahada, she's also 27, 28 years old. So there are many similarities, although both of the riwayat are correct. Used both in our madhab, the books of Shia and Sunni, but the ones that we go with as far as the Shahadat of Janab Sayyidah is 18. But the similarity for Bibi Masumah Qum, Marhum Ayatollah Sayyid Mahmud Marashi Najafi. Ayatollah Marashi Najafi is known. He's buried near the shrine of Bibi Masumah Qum. This Kitab Khana, which is known as the Kitab Khana of Marashi. His father, Ayatollah Sayyid Shahabuddin Marashi, was very keen to find out the exact location of the grave of Hazrat Fatima Zahra Salamullah Alaiha, which unfortunately we don't know still. Some say it's in Baqi, some say it's next to Rasulullah, some say it's between these two places. It was kept hidden by Amir al-Mu'mineen. There was a purpose behind it. So he performed this Khatm Mujarrab for 40 nights. And when he slept after the 40th, he saw our fifth Imam in his dream. Imam said to him, Alayka bi karimati Ahlul Bayt. Upon you is the ziyarat of Karima Ahlul Bayt, which of course is the title of Bibi Masumah Qum. He replied, Imam, by saying that, Oh Imam, I did tawassul to you in order to find out the exact locality of the grave of your Jadda Janab Sayyidah, so that I can perform her ziyarat better. Right now, we don't know where her place of burial is. Imam replied, but I am pointing you towards the grave of Hazrat Masumah Qum Salamullahi Alaiha. Allah has kept Fatima's grave hidden for a reason, and has made the grave of Masumah a place of attraction. If Fatima's grave was ever to be known, it would be glorified and magnified. And Allah has diverted similar glory to the grave of Bibi Masumah Qum Salamullah Alaiha. So that's why you see that how people go in large numbers. In fact, the importance that Imam Rada has placed upon the ziyarat of his sister. He says and that's one of the facts that Imam Rada is saying this, that Janab Masumah Qum passed away before Imam Rada. Some believe that she died after Imam Rada. After hearing the news of Imam Rada passing away or his shahadat, she could not bear it anymore. She was on the way and she fell sick and she passed away. This is one of the ways people mention. But this hadith tells you that Imam Raza shahadat is after the passing away of Bibi Masumah Qum. And he highlighted the importance of her ziyarat. He said what? He said, Manzar al-Ma'asuma biqum kamanzarani. Whoever visits her in Qum, it is as if they have visited me. Imam Sadiq went to the extent when he went ahead and said, Inna lillahi haraman wa huwa makkatu وَلِرَسُولِهِ حَرَمًا وَهُوَ الْمَدِينَةُ وَلِأَمِيرِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ حَرَمًا وَهُوَ الْكُوفَةُ. Let it be known that indeed Allah has a haram, and that is Mecca, where his house Baitullah is. Rasulullah has his haram, which is Medina. Amir al-Mu'mineen has a haram, which is Kufa. وَلَنَا haraman, and we, rest of the Ma'sumin, have a haram. وَهُوَ قُمْ وَسَتُدْفَنُ فِيهِ إِمْرَأَةٌ مِّنْ وُلْدِ تُسَمَّ فَاطِمَةً مَنْ زَارَهَا وَجَبَتْ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. And Imam, sixth Imam, is before Bibi Masumah Qum. He's predicting this ahead of time. Satudfanu fihi imra'atun. A lady will be buried in this land. She will be known as Fatima. Whoever visits her, wajabat lahul jannah. Jannat becomes wajib upon such an individual. Janab Masumah Qum lived for only 27 years. Her fruitful life was bore many fruits. She was only a young lady, maybe not even 10 years old, because at the time of the shahadat of Imam Musa Qum in the year 183, she's 10 years old. So this event takes place before the shahadat of Imam Musa Qum. That a group of people came to Medina to see Imam Musa Qum and ask their questions, Shar'i Sawalat. Imam was not home, and it wasn't like they can come back again. It was a journey that they had embarked upon. It was asked, why are you here? They said, well, we brought some questions. They said, give your questions and come back and get it later. But if Imam is not here, that's okay. This is the household of Imam. Bibi Masumah Qum, who's less than 10 years old, that's for sure. She answers all of the questions, gives it to them, and they leave. As they were exiting the city of Medina, they run into Imam Musa Qum. They greeted Imam saying, Imam, we went to your house to see you and to ask some questions, but we got them answered from your house. Imam said, let me see them. Imam looked at these answers, and then Imam made this dua. May her father be sacrificed over her. Imam Masum is taking pride and mubahat in his daughter. Just imagine the status of such an individual. Yes, she lost her father when she was only 10 years old. She lost her beloved brother. Before she loses him, she passes away. That journey that she embarked, this hijrat that she did for the sake of Waliullah, Imam Rada, Imam of the time. And then she couldn't make it to that extent. The brothers that came along with her, 22, 23 of those Sadat, they were martyred in Sava. The people of Qum came to rescue. They took her. She was already poisoned at that point. They brought her to the city of Qum. The asar of that poison remained in her. Or because of the travel that she had, she only survived for the maximum 17 days. But the 17 days that she lived in the city of Qum, just look at the barakat of that city today. Janab Masumah Qum, the last moment when she passes away, there's no one close by. There's no family member nearby who would perform the last rituals. The people of Qum, the most muqaddas and the most holy people, were brought in to perform these last rituals. But at the moment when they wanted to lower the body of Masumah Qum into the grave, they said, who should we bring? Nobody from her family is here. Who would go ahead and perform these things, these last rituals? They pondered and pondered, and then they thought that there would be this very important person in the city of Qum. His name was Qadir. We should bring him because he's the holiest person in the entire city. He would perform these rituals. As they were thinking about this, they see that there were two men who came riding horses. Their faces were covered and veiled. They got off. They picked up the body of Masumah Qum. One lowered it, the other one went down and received the body. They placed it into the lahad, and these two men got out, and then they went away. It is mentioned that it was two Imams, Imam Rada alayhi salatu wassalam and his son Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wassalam. One one came from Mashhad, Marv, the other one came from Medina, both with Ajaz to go ahead and perform these last rituals. How the people of the city of Qum came together with this ijlal to go ahead and show the respect that she needed and she deserved. But how her Jadda, Janab Sayyada, how she was buried at the night time. Only a few handful people took part in her burial. And then when we come to Sayyid al-Shuhada, that his body laid on the plains of Karbala for 3 days, yet nobody was there to go ahead and bury him. Ala lanatullah al-qawm al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب